Learning outcomes. After studying this module, you shall be able to understand the notion of one of the efficient pricing strategy, that is marginal cost pricing. You shall also be able to identify the advantages and disadvantages of marginal cost pricing and analyze the working of such a pricing mechanism under perfect competition and monopoly. Introduction. Price theories. Price theory pertains to the determination of prices of goods and services by firms. It is based not only on the cost of the product but also on profit margin and a holistic view of the market and future viability. A range of pricing strategies can be employed by a business firm when selling a good or service. These include marginal cost pricing, markup pricing, price discrimination, price leadership, penetration pricing, skimming, absorption pricing, etc. The price determination theories can be classified by the market structure to which they pertain, with the aim of profit maximization. It can also be used to guard an existing market from new entrants, to increase its share in the market, or to enter a new market. Business firms may gain from decreasing or increasing prices depending on the needs and behaviors of customers in the particular market. Finding the right pricing strategy is an important element in running a successful business. Now, this module focuses on the marginal costing method of pricing. Marginal cost pricing. Marginal cost pricing is a pricing technique in which the price of the product is set equal to its marginal cost, that is, the extra cost of producing an extra unit of output. By this policy, a producer charges for each product unit sold only the addition to total cost resulting from materials and direct labor. In other words, this is to say, it is a pricing scheme in which the price charged by a firm is set equal to the marginal cost of production. Businesses often set prices close to marginal cost during periods of poor sales. If, for example, an item has a marginal cost of rupees 10 and a normal selling price is rupees 12, the firm selling the item might wish to lower the price to 1 rupee 80 paisa if demand has decreased. The business would choose this approach because the incremental profit of 20 paisa from the transaction is better than no sale at all. This is believed to be the efficient outcome achieved by competitive markets. The proponents of the ideal of perfect competition have favored the efficiency inherent in the notion of marginal cost pricing. Marginal costing under perfect competition. Now, let us study how marginal costing method can be applied under perfect competition. In order to maximize economic profits, firms choose output at which marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, that is, MR is equal to MC. Now, under perfect competition, we know that marginal revenue is equal to price, which implies that a perfectly competitive firm maximizes profit when MC is equal to P, or marginal cost is equal to price. Now, figure 3.1 illustrates the profit maximization of a perfectly competitive firm. It shows the short run cost curves, that is ATC, which is average total cost, AVC, which is average variable cost, and MC, which is marginal cost. The figure also shows a horizontal line at the market price P. The price line is horizontal because the firm is a price taker. The price of the firm's output is the same no matter what the quantity the firm decides to produce. For a competitive firm, the firm's price equals both its average revenue and its marginal revenue. Now suppose the firm is producing at Q1. At this level of output, marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost. That is, if the firm raised its level of production and sales by 1 unit, the additional revenue, MR1, would exceed the additional cost, that is MC1. Profit, which equals total revenue minus total cost, would increase. Hence, if marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, as it is at Q1, the firm can increase profit by increasing production. A similar argument applies when output is Q2. In this case, marginal cost is greater than marginal revenue. If the firm reduced production by 1 unit, the cost saved MC2 would exceed the revenue lost MR2. Therefore, if marginal revenue is less than marginal cost, as it is Q2, the firm can increase profit by reducing production. Regardless of whether the firm begins with production at low level, as in Q1, or at high level, that is Q2, the firm will eventually adjust production until the quantity produced reaches Q star, which is the profit maximizing output. And at Q star, P is equal to MC. This output Q star is the optimum or the efficient level of output. Now, let us try to analyze marginal cost pricing under monopoly and try to study how it leads to inefficiency under such a market structure. Now, as in the case of a perfectly competitive market, the optimality condition for a monopolist is MR is equal to MC. If marginal revenue is less than marginal cost, it would pay the firm to decrease output, since the savings in cost would more than make up for the loss in revenue. If the marginal revenue is greater than the marginal cost, it would pay the firm to increase output. The only point where the firm has no incentive to change the output is where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Now, because a monopoly firm is the sole producer in its market, it faces the downward sloping market demand curve. As a result, the monopolist has to accept a lower price if it wants to sell more output. Hence, its marginal revenue, which measures the revenue changes when the quantity increases by 1 unit, is always less than price and lies below its demand curve. This implies that at the profit maximizing output, the marginal revenue of a monopoly firm is less than its price. That is, P is greater than MR, which is equal to MC. Now, this is clearly illustrated in figure 3.2. Now, suppose first that the firm is producing at a low level of output, such as Q1. In this case, marginal cost is less than the marginal revenue. If the firm increased production by 1 unit, the additional revenue would exceed the additional cost and profit would rise. Thus, when marginal cost is less than marginal revenue, the firm can increase profit by producing more units. A similar argument applies at high levels of output such as Q2. In this case, marginal cost is greater than marginal revenue. If the firm reduced production by 1 unit, the cost saved would exceed the revenue lost. Thus, if the marginal cost is greater than marginal revenue, the firm can raise profit by reducing production. In the end, the firm adjusts its level of production until the quantity reaches Q star, at which marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. However, a monopoly firm operates where price is greater than marginal cost, whereas a competitive firm operates at a point where price is equal to marginal cost. Thus, in general, the price will be higher and the output lower if the firm behaves monopolistically rather than competitively. For this reason, consumers will typically be worse off in an industry organized as a monopoly than in one organized competitively. Natural monopoly and marginal costing. As discussed earlier, the efficient amount of output in an industry occurs where price equals marginal cost. A monopolist produces where marginal revenue equals marginal cost and thus produces too little output. It would seem that regulating a monopoly to eliminate the inefficiency is pretty easy. All the regulator has to do is to set price equal to marginal cost and profit maximization will do the rest. Unfortunately, it may be that the monopolist would make negative profits at such a price. An example of this is shown in figure 3.3. Here, the minimum point of the average cost curve is to the right of the demand curve, and the intersection of demand and marginal cost lies underneath the average cost curve. Even though the level of output YMC is efficient, it is not profitable. If a regulator set this level of output, the monopolist would prefer to go out of business. This kind of situation often arises with public utilities. Think of a gas company, for example. Here, the technology involves very large fixed cost, creating and maintaining the gas delivery pipes, and a very small marginal cost to providing extra units of gas once the pipe is laid. Similarly, a local telephone company involves very large fixed costs for providing the wires and switching network, while the marginal cost of an extra unit of telephone service is very low. When there are large fixed costs and small marginal cost, you can easily get the kind of situation described in figure 3.3. Such a situation is referred to as a natural monopoly. It should be noted that letting a natural monopolist to set the monopoly price is undesirable due to Pareto inefficiency, and forcing the natural monopoly to produce at the competitive price is infeasible due to negative profits. Therefore, for the most part, natural monopolies are regulated or operated by governments. Different countries have adopted different approaches. In some countries, the telephone service is provided by the government, and in others it is provided by private firms that are regulated by the government. Both of these approaches have their advantages and disadvantages. For example, let us consider the case of government regulation of a natural monopoly. If the regulated firm is to require no subsidy, it must make non-negative profits, which means it must operate on or above the average cost curve. If it is to provide service to all who are willing to pay for it, it must also operate on the demand curve. Thus, the natural operating position for a regulated firm is a point like PAC-YAC in figure 3.3. Here, the firm is selling its product at the average cost of production, so it covers its cost, but it is producing too little output relative to the efficient level of output. This solution is often adopted as a reasonable pricing policy for a natural monopolist. Government regulators set the prices that the public utility is allowed to charge. Ideally, these prices are supposed to be prices that just allow the firm to break even, that is, produce at a point where price equals average cost. The problem facing the regulators is to determine just what the true costs of the firm are. Usually, there is a public utility commission that investigates the costs of the monopoly in an attempt to determine the true average cost and then sets a price that will cover cost. The other solution to the problem of natural monopoly is to let the government operate it. The ideal solution here in this case is to operate the service at price equal to the marginal cost and provide a lump sum subsidy to keep the firm in operation. This is often the practice for local public transportation systems such as buses and subways. The lump sum subsidies may not reflect inefficient operation per se, but rather simply reflect the large fixed cost associated with such public utilities. Then again, the subsidies may just represent inefficiency. The problem with government-run monopolies is that it is almost as difficult to measure their cost as it is to measure the cost of regulated public utilities. Government regulatory commissions that oversee the operations of public utilities often subject them to probing hearings to require them to justify cost data, whereas an internal government bureaucracy may escape such intense scrutiny. The government bureaucrats who run such government monopolies may turn out to be less accountable to the public than those who run the regulated monopolies. Now let us illustrate this marginal costing pricing technique using a numerical. Now as explained above, a marginal cost pricing applies to firms in competitive markets. In other words, it applies to any firm that is a price taker. Each firm expands production if and only if the price is greater than the marginal cost. If the revenue goes up more than the cost, then profit will also increase. Marginal cost is how much cost goes up from making one more unit of the output. The price is how much revenue goes up from selling one more unit of the output. This implies that if the price is bigger than the marginal cost, then the gain in revenue is greater than the loss in added cost. That makes the profit higher, so the firm will expand its production of output. But on the other hand, if price is less than the marginal cost, increasing production costs more than the gain in revenue. In such a situation, it will be profitable for the firm to reduce the production or not expand the production of the output. Now let us illustrate using an example of a firm M, which is a healthcare provider. Now, healthcare provider can be assumed to be a perfectly competitive market structure. Now, given below is the cost schedule for the firm. This cost schedule table shows the total cost and the marginal cost for each number of the patients. So, as is given in the table, when the number of patients is 0, the total cost is 1000, and if we take the number of patients as 4, the table shows that the total cost is 12,000 and the corresponding marginal cost is rupees 2,000. Now suppose the going price is rupees 3,700. At that price, now the question arises, what should be the optimal number of patients that gives the firm M the most profit? Now in order to solve this, now let us start with the situation where the firm is currently treating 0 patients, that is no patients at all. Now the table indicates that the total cost of seeing one patient is rupees 4,500. Now since the patient is paying only 3,700, does that imply that seeing 0 patients is better? Otherwise the firm will lose rupees 800. Now we can develop a marginal costing rule here. Now starting from 0, you add patients whose marginal cost is less than the rupees 3,700 price. Now when you come to a marginal cost that is higher than rupees 3,700 price, you stop before adding that patient. Now it can be checked from the table that if we apply this procedure, the profit turns out to be the greatest when the firm serves 7 patients. Thus, the firm maximizes profits using marginal costing when the number of patients is 7. At this level, the marginal cost is equal to the price, which is equal to 3,700. At any other level, what we observe is that either the marginal cost is greater than the price or less than the price. So using this example, we are able to illustrate how the marginal cost pricing technique can be applied to a perfectly competitive market structure, and how such a perfectly competitive firm like the healthcare provider in this case can maximize the profit at a level where the price is equal to the marginal cost. And as we saw in this example, such profit maximization or optimal output results when the number of patients is 7. Now let us turn to the advantages of marginal cost pricing. The advantages of using a marginal costing method for pricing include the following. It is a relatively simple pricing method, that is, It is quick to calculate and easy to implement. It is also efficient in the case of short-term decision making. It is based on the variable cost of production, which ignores fixed cost and overheads. It can also help to stabilize fluctuations in the demand. And it is also very useful when the firm has excess capacity and may not be able to put its resources to other, perhaps more profitable uses. Marginal cost pricing can be a useful way to attract other different market segments into the market. For example, low peak train travelers may be attracted by lower prices and only travel during the day because of low prices. They may not otherwise have traveled. This method can be a good way to remain in business and price competitive in a time of difficult trading. Prices can then be raised later when the economic situation improves. However, such a pricing mechanism can also have various disadvantages. So, let us study some potential disadvantages of using the marginal cost pricing method. The following are the disadvantages of using such a pricing technique. It ignores market prices. That is, prices are set based on cost and not on the market rates. This strategy may work in the shorter term, but is not sustainable as a long-term pricing strategy, as the firm will need to recover the full cost of production. This method can result in lower price expectation and make it more difficult to raise prices again at a later stage. Marginal cost pricing sets prices at their absolute minimum. Any company routinely using this methodology to determine its prices may be giving away an enormous amount of margin that it could have earned if it had instead set prices at or near the market rate. Now, if the markets are not fully separated, then there can be leakage between the markets with different prices. Customers who might have paid a higher price may take advantage of the lower marginal cost price. Another disadvantage of such a pricing strategy is that a company that routinely engages in this pricing strategy will find that it must continually hold down cost in order to generate a profit, which does not work well if the company wants to transition into a higher service or a higher quality market. Summary. Now, let us summarize whatever we have discussed in the present module. Marginal cost pricing is the practice of setting the price of a product equal to the extra cost of producing an extra unit of output. There are many advantages and disadvantages of such a pricing method. This is an efficient outcome achieved under perfect competition, where profit is maximized at P equal to MC. However, under monopoly, the most profitable level of output is the one for which MR is equal to MC. At this output level, price exceeds marginal cost. Since a monopolist charges a price in excess of marginal cost, it will produce an inefficient amount of output. Natural monopoly can be regulated by enforcing a policy of marginal cost pricing. If a natural monopolist operates where price equals marginal cost, then it will produce an efficient level, but it will be unable to cover its cost.